Thank you so much. Welcome back. Thank you again for joining. It feels important to gather on this day, October 7th, as a way of adding a different impulse to the field, to that which perpetrated the horrific attacks on October 7th, the attacks by Hamas, and also that perpetrated the oppression of Palestinians that preceded that, and the genocide that has followed, or the genocide that preceded this one by 80 years against the Jewish people by the Nazi regime. And what we're talking about today with Sami is a disruption to that cycle and of that mindset. In fact, the words disrupt and dismantle show up 90 times in Sami's new book, The Sacred Awakening, Reclaiming Christ Consciousness. And it should be no surprise that peace shows up about 300 times. So to introduce Sami, to get into our conversation, he's the co-director of Nonviolence International and founder of Holy Land Trust, a peace-building organization in Bethlehem, which is where he lives and where he joins us from today. When I first met Sami, I was so stunned by his vision that I felt I had to do something to honor it and to honor him. And so it was in his name that I created the Visionary of the Year Award, which he was the first recipient of in 2011. And ever since when I first met him, he has inspired me so much with his humility and his dogged commitment to peace, and also for his courage to voice what people often don't want to hear. And I would have to say, Sami, that this book is no different. It is an extraordinary, oh good, we've already put it in the chat. It is an extraordinary and profound call. And I was honestly shocked because I was thinking about all the things you could have written about Sami, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, life under occupation, peace itself, your life, trauma, bridging divides, or you could have written about any peace leader in history, Gandhi, MLK Jr., Mandela, Tutu, but you took on Jesus, but not as a religious figure. In fact, your book is a direct challenge to what some might see as traditional Christianity. But really, it's holding up Jesus as a radical, revolutionary, spiritual peace leader who challenges structures, systems of religion, governments, organization, or really any structure of control. And it's such a courageous act that you would even were willing and felt that this was the time to write this book. So I wonder if we could start there. What compelled you to write this book right now?
Well, first of all, it is such an honor to be with you. And always, I love our connection and when we reconnect. And I also want to thank you for all of the work that you have done through decades, engaging in peace work and really challenging yourself and challenging others to really discover the essence of what it means for us to live in peace, and not just about reaching agreements. It's not about conquering and quieting, but really that essence of peace and justice that you have been working on. So I honor the partnership that we've had for quite a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful for that. Yeah. So what pushed me to write the book is people. I really never thought of writing a book. I never had the intention of writing a book. But when I began to discover Jesus outside of Christianity, I think the opening line I say in the book, I had to step out of Christianity to discover Jesus. I had to really let go of it. And let go of it wasn't just to say, I'm not a Christian anymore. There was a lot of emotional and spiritual, communal attachment to Christianity itself. But in Christianity, I was also very challenged by the notion that we learn about a certain Jesus, how he behaved, how he engaged, what he taught, the miracles he did, how he engaged with people at the most basic, simplest level. And there was a counter also narrative in churches, which is a narrative that is embedded in fear, in belief, in this concept of salvation, in this concept of your sins will not be forgiven if you don't, even though he
Mm.
again talks about how often we should forgive sins. And so for me, it was a big challenge to be between two narratives. And like many people, I think we try to fit it, to try to play the game of how can we fit, yes, the narrative of the peacemaker, the narrative of the kind Jesus, the loving, the confrontational Jesus to systems and structures of empire, at the same time full of love and compassion, to the narrative of salvation, of belonging to a certain group of people, you're in and out. And at one point it was too much. And I had to make a decision. I had to say, if it was a choice between Christianity and Jesus, I'm going to choose Jesus. And I want to learn him and follow him. And to learn him and follow him means I had to also step out of this notion of what faith means, and
Mm.
to really read him and see him, and the way I've learned to see him and love him as an amazing man who walked the land that I live in,
Yeah.
proclaiming the kingdom of God, whatever that means. You don't hear much talk about it other than people talking about it as what happens to you after, but he was proclaiming it, teaching and healing illnesses and ailments, how he engaged with people, and what he taught. And I think this is something
Mm.
that has been missing a lot in the churches. We look at Jesus, salvation, the miracles he did, and sermon material, but the basic teachings of what he taught his followers is something that I think has been really missing, other than,
Mm.
again, sermon material that we use in churches. And my journey was to discover what he taught. At the end of the day, no matter what we think Jesus was, when he was here, he was a rabbi and he was a teacher. And rabbis at that time taught students to become something, not just to learn something. Now we go to school to learn, we go to university to learn. At that time, it was, what are you becoming? If
Mm.
we didn't have they didn't have education like we have now. You don't go to school and study different topics, and then at one point you choose a career in a certain topic. From the beginning of your life, you grow up being apprenticed in a becoming of something, a carpenter, a fisherman, a rabbi, a soldier. And Jesus was inviting people to become what he was, which is a person that had attained a higher consciousness, what we call Christ consciousness, but it is a higher consciousness to begin to engage with humanity, to begin to see things through a different eye than what we have been accustomed to seeing our life, what we are born
Mm.
with and what we grow up with. And this is where, when you use the word disrupted, it's interesting that you counted the words. I haven't yet. But when you use these words, that he was aiming to disrupt systems and structures of separation, systems and structures of duality, of hierarchy, of patriarchy. And patriarchy, not just as male dominating female, patriarchy as a structure where there is division between top and bottom, those who have access to and those who are denied access to. And this was his aim. This was his real aim, and to manifest what I believe was the kingdom of God being at hand, the dream that we all have. It's not a pipe dream. We could all dream what peace on earth can look like. And that's what he was inviting us into. How do
Mhm.
we make that dream into a reality?
And I love that you bring up the becoming part. This wasn't something to do, or he did it, so we don't have to. I mean, that's even a step beyond. Like, he's the doer, we're just there passively watching him, I guess, or enjoying his sacrifice. But you say in one point about this isn't about doing peace, this is about becoming peacemakers, not making peace, but becoming peace. And what really stands out as qualities, as he's talking about, and you go through the book is, how he lays out the roadmap for us. But two other qualities, other than the disrupting and dismantling, which did just over and over again, that he's this revolutionary, rebellious, preacher that is just everywhere he goes, he's disrupting. But it's the other quality is humility that really stood out because maybe it's in such stark contrast to what we're seeing in not just leaders right now, but in our systems of dense power and domination. And so the humility that you bring out again and again that he embodied. And so I want to get to the disruption in a little bit, but do you want to comment on that seeming paradox? I mean, how can you be both so meek and humble and this disruptor, this strength? And one thing well, I'll let you comment in a second, but just to on the humility part, one quote I love that you used is a meek person is not weak, because I think we think of humility as weakness. A meek person is not weak, but has channeled their strength toward goodness. But sometimes we might even think goodness is, oh, like that's weak too. But anyway, I'd love for you to comment on the paradox and then go into a bit about that humility and what that means to you.
Yeah. Yeah, when we say Jesus was a disruptor, he was a disruptor of everything. It's not just about the systems and the structures that are out there, it is also the systems and the structures that are within us, the things that we assume we cannot live without. Even the concept of identity, which is so normalized in us, how we even define ourselves and identify ourselves immediately. Sami is a Palestinian, blah, 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 son
Christian,
of,
yeah.
son of Christian, immediately. And then we box people into these identities and we relate to them based on how they identify themselves. For an Israeli who looks at me as a Palestinian, he sees me differently. For a Palestinian who looks at me maybe differently, if I'm a Muslim Palestinian or a Christian Palestinian, we look at each other differently. And this way we gauge how we relate to them. So he was breaking every single structure. And the biggest structures that he was inviting, again, was to break the structures within us. And then this is where the journey of the Beatitudes for me became the blueprint. And again, something that, again, in my limited approach to theology and understanding Christianity, even though I grew up in a Christian family, my father was the president of the Bible college. I did church 5 times a week, like many people. Most people do not do that. But never was there an explanation of the Beatitudes as more than, again, sermon material, bumper stickers to be used for, putting on, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the poor in spirit. If you are this, then you will be blessed. And I think this is where the first invitation to begin to break things within us is actually in the first maybe 2 or 3 Beatitudes that he was talking about, which is, blessed are you when you become poor in spirit. This was his invitation. He was inviting us into poverty. He was inviting us into letting go of attachment. He was inviting us to the first step of living love is to break fear. And when we are attached emotionally, physically, materially to things, we're always afraid of losing that thing that we are attached to. And so the first step that he invites us to is this step of poverty. And then the second step is the step of mourning and grieving, of burying what is old so that we could open up the possibility of what is new. And this is the story of the resurrection over and over again. How do we bury and bring to death and mourn and grieve what has been past, not to hold on to the illusions of it, not to hold on to the stories of it, so that we can really open up to manifest the new. And then that's where the beauty of meekness comes in. I think it's the third beatitude where he says, blessed are the meek. Because many times, and especially, as you know very well, people who are engaging in spiritual practices or enlightenment, the ego jumps in. Look at me, how great I am. Look at me of what I've let go. Look at me of what I've healed. I need to be honored. I need to be respected. I need to be identified with the things that I have done. And immediately he jumps in and says, "Oh, let us be humble in this. Let us be meek in this." And for me, that meekness, I think I talk about it as like when you're meek, when engaging in a horse, when you're making a horse meek, it is not about dismantling the power of the horse. It is harnessing that power
Mm.
for the right time and the right conditions to be used. And goodness is definitely one. Standing for righteousness and justice, coming out of meekness, is another
Mhm.
one, where we're now standing for justice when we see atrocities happening, when we see genocide happening, when we see racism happening. We're not just reacting to it, we're harnessing that power of righteousness in us through meekness and then using it for good, for the goodness. And Jesus, I think the profound thing about him being so powerful was him being meek, was
Mhm.
him being humble, how he engaged humbly with people around him. I mean, he became quite a famous rabbi during his time. People were really following him. And then he would just, scan the crowds and look at the one who was the most marginalized and go to them and maybe ask them a question and sit with them. The stories that we don't hear much in the Bible, but you could imagine how he was so humble and how he behaved. And in that humbleness, people followed him. People engaged with him not out of fear, as we do with leaders today.
Yeah.
They engaged with him, they trusted him, they loved him, they wanted to follow him because he was humble and he was
Mm.
meek. And that is such a beautiful gift if we can see leaders, and we've had leaders in our history who engaged in this. He's not unique in this, and that again, I will keep saying this is the beauty of Jesus, that he is not unique in what he did. He set
Mhm.
the roadmap for us, but many people did that knowing him or not knowing him. And so for me, when I see a leader in our community who is engaging in serving others in humbleness and meekness, I want to know that person. I want to get to know them. When I
Mm.
see a peacemaker in our community, Palestinian or Israeli, that is really coming from that place of humbleness, not from ego, not from, I want to make peace with you because I know better than you, then there's something connects with me. At that essence of humanity, we
Yeah.
connect with leaders who are that. But again, sadly, the systems and the structures that we have been living in for quite a long time make us follow leaders out of fear. I want to say more than anything, out of a sense of not being kicked out of threat by them. And we see this growing and growing in our times
Yeah.
today, when we think we should have reached a time when such dictatorships and authoritarian and totalitarian systems that have caused so much violence should be dismantled. We see leaders that are leading by aggression, by fear, by lies, by manipulation, and people follow them really for reasons I really don't know, but I know that fear is definitely a big component of that.
And I think too, they just take up so much space. Whether it's they or the ones who have attracted millions of followers, you talk about also the meekness, not just making our wisdom, using it as a platform. Also just like it's not in the number of followers or, of course, in their roles that they're ascribed to. It almost demands a humbling of ourselves to even have the intuition to recognize that meekness and humility, that there is strength rather than being a doormat or, insignificant. That it takes the humbling in ourselves to recognize the humility and meekness in someone else. So it's really interesting how even that's that two-way street.
And then I have to admit that part of my hesitation in writing the book is for that reason. I did not want to become a reference, the one, the knowledgeable about this. And then so even writing the book or going on social media about it, I'm hesitating every time when I'm getting pushed by people. You need to do this. You need to come on this webinar. You need to come on this interview. But in all honesty, it holds me back because I know that there is something in power, and we know this, power corrupts, and this is something that is very important for me to deeply keep checking with myself. And again, going back to the question, what do I bring into poverty? What do I let go of? What are invitations
Mm.
that are so tempting? I talk about the temptations that Jesus went to as the ego
Yeah.
temptations. Where does my ego come in any setting that says, "Oh, Sam, you're gonna get credit for this. You're gonna become famous for this. You're gonna make money for this." And then I take a breath, check yourself. and learn to
Mm,
say no, learn to say no. And this is what Jesus was doing to the temptations that he was facing. It was
mm.
his temptations of his own ego that were challenging him in the situations, and he had to go through these challenges. And these temptations never stop, as we know very well.
Hmm.
They will keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. But this is the journey. This
Mm.
is the journey of what I see Jesus engaged in. This is the journey of awakening Christ consciousness within us. This ability to be aware of everything that is happening within me and around me every single moment, and to make that decision from that place of awareness and from the place of being, not from the place of just reacting.
I I want to, before we get into the peacemaking beatitude, I want to touch on this a bit more because I cannot imagine Sammy in taking on a subject as huge as this and as and as like directly challenging to every like system that you can imagine. What resistance came up in you, and you talk so many times about the temptations that Jesus faced and the resistance, and then the courage that we each have to have as peacemakers, because this does, I'm sure everyone on this call experiences this kind of resistance and the need to cultivate that courage to push through, to do anything in peace building, 100%, but also anything that's good that seems to inspire sometimes an equal amount of resistance. So I don't know if you want to give us a vignette or an example of resistance that came up for you, inner or external, to this book, and how did you harness the courage to have that? By the way, Sammy has no idea what questions I'm asking him on this call, and I am putting you on the spot, which is every question. I know that you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, but
Yeah, no, it's good.
um,
The
I also know
temptations.
you're up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I want to share one experience that I had was my uncle Alex. He's a pastor. I don't know if you met him before. He was
Yeah.
Baptist of the East Jerusalem Baptist Church here. He's retired now, lives in Oregon. He is such a dear and inspiring teacher to me all my life. And and uh and he received the book and he read the book and then he told me we need to talk. Listen, we need to talk. And that was a little bit, oh my goodness, what is he gonna talk about now? And yeah, and when we were on the phone and he called me, he's like, Sam, I just want to say I love your book. I love what you wrote. I'm learning so many things from it, things that I never learned in seminary, things about Jesus that I never knew, never thought of. But why have to really attack Christianity so much in it? Why couldn't you just talk about the teachings and not that? And so that's one experience that I've had, and I've had a few of people that have yeah made uh made that question, asked me that question, why? But I think in my essence, it is not coming from a place of anger. It is coming from a place
Mm.
of love because I really
That's so
feel
clear. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, I did not. I know many people who leave religion, Christianity, or other things. They go on the attack, and by going into the attack, that in the essence of the teachings of Jesus means that they never mourned and never grieved their past and their experience. And
Mm,
I had that experience. I had my anger, I had my frustration, I had my resentment to Christianity and the church, and it's not my intention to be in that energy. And therefore I did go through my grieving process. I did have time where I reflected and mourned that chapter of my life so that I can open up
mm,
into a new chapter. And so I understand the people that are angry, that have experienced violence in the church, and many people have experienced unspeakable violence in the institutions of churches. But for us to be able to live our life and to really manifest something new, we need to let go. And so my writing of what Peter and Paul did to what the church fathers did to what the church has become today is really coming from a place to challenge, but from compassion and love. As I say in the book, you know, if the church taught us just to live maybe 5% or 10%, not just taught us, but sort of commanded us, like we are commanded to give our tithes, like we are commanded to come to church, like we are commanded to do different things, eat fish on Fridays in some churches, whatever it is. If they just said, we need you to do this and this and this, we need you to learn humbleness, we need you to engage in peace work in your community. You won't come to church if you don't do the things of the Beatitudes. Imagine what the world would be like. I
Mm,
really feel that if the church initially began to, and now has an opportunity to really reconnect to Jesus and his teachings, and I don't say this for the church, the invitation is for everybody. Jesus,
yeah.
for me, was a man who came to his people and then realized that his message was even greater than his people and opened it up for the entire world. And if people really began to follow the teachings of Jesus, and again, not him being any special than other great spiritual leaders who achieved great consciousness and higher consciousness
Yeah.
throughout the world, then the world will be different. The world will be in a much better place. But specifically, because Christianity adopted Jesus, the challenge is there more to Christianity to just have reflect back on what Christianity has become. And sadly, it has become a version of what Jesus was rejecting and trying to
Mm,
dismantle in his times. And
yeah.
and I don't, again, I don't say it was done intentionally. And this is where I talk about that we live in a prevailing consciousness where structures and systems like this intentionally are probably meant for good, but they still fall into a consciousness of duality and separation and hierarchy and fear and abuse in that and control in that. And so if we begin to shift out of that consciousness into kingdom consciousness, what then these institutions would look like? That's the question I invite us to be in.
Right. And you invite us into that larger question too. It's not about dismantling a system of oppressive religion. It's all of it. It's politics, it's society, it's gender, it's, everything, any structure or organization that would separate, that would create hierarchy, it's all of that. And so
It goes to the even most basic level of how we love each other, how
hmm,
we are intimate with each other. When we talk about that I love somebody unconditionally, what does that really mean? Where do our expectations come in? Where do our assumptions come in? Where do our control mechanisms come in? Where does our
yeah.
fear of losing them come in? And so this is very important. Like even in the
Mm,
most we think of it as structures of dictatorship and control, and it exists on every level of our lives, even in how we raise our children. Do we raise our children
mhm.
from a place of fear of if we don't do this, then they will become this. If we don't teach them this, then they will not have jobs when they grow up.
Yeah.
There's so much fear embedded in our just very intimate relationships and daily. And I say again, it's not about making it right or wrong. This is the consciousness. These are the systems that we live in,
Yeah. Live
and
and move and breathe in. Yeah.
exactly. And we need to begin to think differently, become differently, and maybe even begin to create differently. What are systems that
Mm,
embody unity, embody love, embody community, embody trust and respect with each other? This is a big calling, and yeah, might some people might think, well, this is a utopia. This is you're in dreamland. Well, this is what Jesus was about. Jesus
mm,
was dreaming that big dream and inviting
mhm.
us into it for sure. So why don't we do it?
And not some far off dream, but present now, which
Yeah,
I love
as
how empowering that is.
as
I'm
we said
gonna,
from the beginning,
oh, go ahead.
if I ask everybody just to close their eyes for a minute in this session and just imagine the world, what it would look like in peace. And I think we will all have the same image of it. We all see how people relate to each other, how they engage with each other. We see how we relate to nature. that there isn't scarcity, there is abundance, there is love, there is compassion, we could all imagine that world. We know it is possible. So it's not engaging in something that is completely impossible, but it is how do we make that what we think is impossible to become a possibility in our lives.
Mm. It's so helpful even to just take a moment to remember that that invitation is there and that that consciousness is there and accessible to each one of us. And it's almost like, and like you said, the call is there. It's just, will we answer? Will we see through those eyes? Will we humble ourselves so that that we have that vision? It's always there and available. And um, I, by the way, I want to tell everyone in about 15 minutes, we will open it up if comments are coming to you or questions or reflections. But I do want to get to the heart of what I know is really important to this audience, and it is about peacemaking. And you spend a lot of time, of course, in the book about what peace is. It of course goes back to the Beatitudes, the blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. There's so much in that one specifically. And I love the notion of peace that you start with as a challenge is that it's not, if we think about what you just said, the vision, is it just singing Kumbaya and peace is just a staid, very quiet, safe environment? Or is it truly not just the absence of that outward external conflict, but the presence of something so much deeper, the presence of justice and harmony and equality and purpose and abundance and all those things. And so anyway, if we can, there's so many aspects to that beatitude and to peacemaking. I don't know if you have an initial comment on the definition of peace and what he invited us into a different vision of it.
Yeah. When I first started writing the book, initially it was about how do we become peacemakers. And then I
Oh,
began to
interesting. That
understand
was going to
that
be the whole focus of the book.
that was going to be the focus, which is the last beatitude in a way,
Yeah.
which is the journey of becoming a peacemaker. And then I began to discover that Jesus was talking a lot about kingdom and becoming like me. And that's where it expanded to also include kingdom consciousness and Christ consciousness. And so I'm glad I didn't write the book 5 years ago because I would have missed that important component. And I was in my mindset, I was still thinking of peacemaking in the very dualistic understanding of peacemaking that we still have today, which is about the absence of violence, but not the manifestation of righteousness and justice, where peacemaking is how can we get Palestinians and Israelis to come and sit together and reach some agreement where peace is the end of violence and reaching some prosperity where both communities are able to live with each other. And so I used to think of it from that old consciousness of or the prevailing consciousness, like that's what we live in. We want peace. We want every nation to live in some sort of peace and prosperity and goodness with each other, which would be beautiful anyway. I mean, if we reach that point of having no wars, it's great. Uh, but then I began to discover that Jesus was inviting us even to something much greater than
Yes.
that, which is the idea of the kingdom, which is to attain a higher consciousness and manifest that consciousness on earth, becoming sacred in our peacemaking, not just political or ideological in our peacemaking. And so for me, I don't want to say it is either. I think for me it is a way because one of the things that I find deep comfort in Jesus and his way of life and his teachings, that he wasn't like many people try today, uh, just work on my inner peace, work on my centeredness, and
Yeah.
avoid everything that is out there. I can't engage. I'm too busy working on myself. I cannot deal with what's happening out there. And sadly, there are many people that are engaging in sort of this inner peace work, which I think is beautiful, but it's missing a component. And on the other side, there are many people that are engaging in the resistance. Let us stop them. Let us attack them. Let us bring an end to injustice. And these are the angry activists that are filled with bitterness and hatred and resentment. And in a way, rightly so because of what's happening, but their bitterness and hatred overtakes them. They go into burnout, they go into failure, they go into giving up. And what Jesus was inviting to for us as peacemakers is to bring both together, sacredness and activism together. This is where the term sacred activism for me, I think, initially started. How can we engage in our personal journey? And at the same time, understanding that the test of our personal journey is how we engage in the communities that we are in. How do we engage with the situations and the conflicts and the tragedies of the world itself? And how do we stand like Jesus did? He stood up very, very strong against the systems and the structures of power. Interestingly, his systems and structures of power from his own people before those of others. He challenged the Jewish
Interesting.
institution
Mm,
more than he challenged even the Roman Empire.
hmm.
He understood that the Roman Empire had to be dealt with, but you cannot deal with the Roman Empire if you are, as a Jew during that time, or any group of people in our time, just claiming to be victimized to that system, oppressed by that system. You need pity for being occupied by that system. It was like, no, no, you take responsibility also. You need to stand up, or even more, become uh, not just obedient to the system, but compliant to that system as well, working with that system. And these are the leaders that he was really, really upset with. These are the ones he pretty much called them evil within his system, those who are selling out their own people to have allegiance with the power of the Roman Empire. And so he was a rebel. He challenged to the core. And I think many people know the story of him turning the tables in the temple. He knew. He knew what he was doing when he was doing that. He knew the sign that he was giving. It wasn't just turning a few tables of some merchants in the temples. He knew that was he was touching the core and the heart of the system of occupation and oppression of his people at that time. And it's really interesting because it connected me to stories like uh, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, his famous nonviolent action was the Salt March.
Hmm.
And Mahatma Gandhi, and what many people don't know, took him weeks, maybe even months to study, to figure out, to understand, to create different scenarios before he decided this is the action that I'm
Wow.
going to take that's going to topple the British Empire. And the same with the Montgomery bus boycotts in the United States. It wasn't, just a random person just riding on a bus and saying, oops, look what's happening to me. It was planned, strategically thought of, understood, understanding how the systems of power will react to the actions that we will
Mm.
do, and then based on that, practicing, and then based on that, engaging. And so Jesus, in that sense, was the first strategic nonviolent activist. When he went in and turned the tables in the temple, he studied this, he knew it. His disciples, I think, at one point told him, like, man, this is too much. This is too early for us to do this. Like, no, this is the time.
But
Uh,
also, Sami, he had the internal readiness. Like Gandhi, his followers said, "All right, we're ready. Let's go. Let's act." And he said, "No, you're not ready."
yeah,
It took them years of the internal emptying out, like you talk about, the humbling and the dedication to righteous, all those things before they could be in a position to challenge. So it's
yeah,
also
exactly.
like the external strategy, but also, gosh, the internal work that and how do
Exactly.
we know when we're ready?
I think we will. This is the point. This is the point. And for me, it's been a question, always asking, what is the salt when it comes to the occupation that we are facing as Palestinians? What is the Montgomery bus boycott that we need to do? And when will we be ready for that? And so these are very, very deep
Ex-
questions for me, because as a
Yeah.
Palestinian, I still live under occupation. I live in times of genocide that breaks my heart. I never ever thought, as a Palestinian, as a person living in this land, that I will see and experience what is happening to us. And at the same time, it's always this question, okay, what can I do? And what can I do not from a place of hatred and resentment and revenge, but from a
Mm.
place of understanding and healing and love and compassion and resistance that will lead to transformation. This is what we are called to.
And I think too, balancing, sometimes I feel like there's a sense of urgency that, oh my gosh, it has to be done now because so many people are dying, or so many, okay, we have to act or speak out or whatever the action is. And how to even navigate that. That is that a
Yep.
false sense of urgency that's being placed on that? And you know what I mean? Is it
I
is
know,
it
I'm fully.
external fear? Is it, oh, if we don't act, then we don't trust that God's got the bigger picture? It's almost like it could be, it's a fear of a different kind.
No, we are called to act. We are called to engage, absolutely, and we are called to respond. And again, I'm like, I was in a call a few days ago, and I was asked if Jesus was here today and looking into what's happening, what do you think he would do?
Mm,
And I honestly, and it's not because I'm an activist, I honestly think he would be on one of the flotillas. He would be on one of those boats saying, I need to go into Gaza. I need to help those who have been pushed to the margins in that land. And it's
mm,
not just against the systems of occupation and and Israelis. It is about seeing and having compassion to the people that are living in that situation. This is what Jesus would do, and he would pay the price for it probably.
mm,
And again, I'm not saying this as a political activist with an ideology. I'm saying it from a place of kingdom consciousness, asking what Jesus, who carried that Christ consciousness, would do today. And he wouldn't be sitting in a house in Jerusalem or Bethlehem or Nazareth and just teaching more sermon materials and praying even for the people there. And I love prayer and I think it's important, but he would do something. And this is why we go back to that verse: Jesus engaged, he walked, he met with, he taught, and he healed. Healing is action that he did. That's the action that he engaged in at that time. And he would be challenging the authorities. If it's the Palestinian leadership or the Israeli leadership,
mhm,
he would be challenging both of them. What are you doing? What is motivating you? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? What is behind it? And he would understand that the core of it all is fear. At the
mm.
core of everything that is happening in this land is fear. And when you bring fear with power, this is where the disasters come in. And then this is, you've heard me say this for many, many years. When you combine absolute fear and absolute power together, you create absolute disaster. I never thought that disaster would be as big as the one we're having. But this is the result when fear and trauma is not healed, when reconciliation is not meant. This is the failure of the peace process that we were in for many, many years, being manipulated by political players around the world with economic interests and their own ideological interests, and not a peace that really brought the people together to heal and reconcile. What is happening now is a failure of 100 years of war and peace that we have been living in this land.
So, Sammy, and I love the part, I mean, you're so clear about the roadmap that Jesus lays out and that he commended his followers to do, that he said, go and do ye likewise. And then there's also a part where you bring out that we each have diverse callings, that some of us are teachers, some of us are musicians, and,
Mhm.
that we each have our method to do that. And so, I took a lot of hope in that because it's like, oh, like, and I should ask you, like, well, then why aren't you on the flotilla? It's been following in Jesus' footsteps. And like,
And honestly,
why aren't
they
we
would,
all like, what are we
yeah,
supposed
yeah.
to be doing different things? Or like, how do you square that even?
Well, I think if we all begin to live the teachings of Jesus, and especially his Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount in our lives, we will begin to see change happen in our communities. And once we see change happen in our communities, we will begin to see change happening in our nations. Jesus gave this message 2,000 years ago. If we are able to begin to live it now,
Oh, Sammy, you got muted. There you are.
oops, okay, sorry.
If we begin to live it now, you said.
Yeah, so the message was 2,000 years ago. Let us begin. Let us begin to live it now. We're not going to end all wars. It's not just the genocide that's happening in Gaza. It's happening in Sudan. It's happening in Congo. It's happening in many places around the world. It's happening in our households. It's
Look
happening to
at
our
gun
neighbors.
violence in the US.
Exactly. It's happening everywhere. So let us begin to live this. And Jesus was calling us to create these communities, not to create churches, to create communities where people come together and practice what he has taught
Mm,
us. And yes, I'm fully aligned with you. Some people need to get on the flotillas, but the teacher at school needs to teach their students the
mm,
ways of the Beatitudes, which I think are such beautiful, and to allow for that next generation to rise where we don't have to worry about these conflicts happening again. And to understand, sadly, that even if peace happens now, some peace happens now at this, Pax Romano agreement reached between Palestinians and Israelis. This does not prevent another disaster from happening 10, 20, 30 years from now. And so to prevent the future wars, the future genocides from happening, let us begin now. Definitely stop as best as we can what's happening now, but not
mm,
to remain silent when it ends, to really begin to mobilize ourselves in becoming peacemakers.
mhm. Ah, that's powerful. There's like a billion questions we didn't get to, but I want to open it up to folks to be able to engage with you. And even if you haven't read the book yet, I mean, there's just a lot here that I know Sammy is always up for any question or reflection or comment, but please keep them brief so we can hear from as many folks as possible. And Isabel, I'd invite you to unmute if you'd like to ask your question to kick us off. And then if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat.
I found that Sammy, thank you so much, and Janessa as well. This is really, really, really rich and wonderful. I was writing up my question for in the chat, and just think you were answering it as I was writing. So there's so much, but maybe the essence of it is still something worth further comments on. But it's so I've come partway through understanding inner peace, a personal peace practice has to involve relationship. And I see that the relationship in my family and in my community and then a bit in the news. But the disconnect from being living on an island off of Washington State to wars and conflicts and things is so intellectual to me in a way. And it's like difficult to know what are the steps for the next, next stage. And I think definitely it's, asking God, what am I being assigned to do, perhaps, with less fear, with
Mhm.
less like not narrowing like, oh, that's not possible or that's not possible or whatever. But I thought you might have some ideas on, I don't, whether this relates to anybody else, but just what the next step of action is. And also I think maybe more consistent prayer, even if we stay in that sort of mode of metaphysics and prayer for something to keep active instead of like throwing it out to the wind and then forgetting for another month to pray about it. I mean, it's just like, how do we keep engaged? So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. To be quick, I think one of the issues of the Beatitudes is that they are not steps where you finish and then you move to the next, move to the next, move to the next. It is an ongoing process. It is evolving and it is rotating and my experience and I want to say I am as a beginner in this as all of you. I say that I wrote this book for me more than I wrote it for anybody else because I wanted a study guide for myself that I use as a reference. And so I'm reading the book as you are reading this book, and I'm taking notes in it as well and saying, okay, this is what I need to do now. And so what we are invited to is to attain, and I really believe this is what the message and core message of Jesus was for us individually and collectively attain a higher consciousness. Jesus said, there's a verse in the Bible that I hardly ever heard sermons or preachers talk about, when he says, you can do greater things than what I have done. You don't hear a lot of sermons on this. I've asked pastors to talk about this. They find a way to go around it. But Jesus understood that, and my interpretation of it, Jesus was a man doing this work on his own. He had attained that consciousness in a situation where nobody else, and this is why he actually invited people to follow him, to learn what he had learned so that they would create a community. And he understood that in unity, in oneness, in bringing many individuals together who attain that consciousness, greater transformation can happen in the area where they are in and in the world that we live in. And this is why he said you could do greater things, because in a collective, we could do greater things than us as individuals. And so this is my invitation. Even living on an island, ask who are around you that can really begin to engage in this work and this process. And then the great thing that we have is social media. We have internet. We have an ability to connect with people all around the world. I'm seeing people from many, many countries in this space that we are in here. So let our voices be heard globally. And people, I really, really believe people are thirsty and yearning for something new. People are tired of the systems that we have been living in, the systems that we have created. Even the powerful ones are tired in the systems that we're in. This is why we need to liberate, as you know, this line, the oppressor and the oppressed from the oppression. So I think there is a fertile ground for us to plant the seeds in globally and to utilize whatever means we have. Sorry, that was a longer answer than
Yes,
I
too
wanted, but thank you
lengthy,
for the
Sami.
question, Isabel. Thank you.
Jamie, and again, raise your hand, or if I don't see, I guess for non-gallery, but do the raise hand or put something in the chat. Jamie, I don't know if you wanted to speak your reflection out loud.
I just getting so much out of it. Sami already ordered the book, so I'm so looking forward to read it. And I love at the beginning you talk about I have let go of Christianity to discover Jesus, and it resonated with me so much. And I think when we get out of the box of the institution, right, religion, the structured organization, we can really find the essence of it, and it becomes such a universal thing. I really admire your bravery to like take it on and just focus on Jesus, and I think anyone who read it probably will resonate with it. It's become it become non-denominational. So thank you, and I look forward to reading the book.
Thank you. Yeah, and one thing that I did, because I want to create a space for discussion. So before you get the book, after you get the book, if you have Instagram or Facebook, I created pages for the book itself for people to come in and let us just bring our questions and comments and views together. My hope and in the humbleness of this is to create something new, to create a movement of people like you and me that are questioning things and trying to find answers beyond what we have inherited and what we've been told from our fathers and our institutions. And Tom is clapping. Thank you.
And actually, Suzette and Tom, let's just go back to back because we only have 3 more minutes. But please share your reflection or question, and then we'll let Sami have a final word at the end.
Hi, thanks you guys so much. I love, Sami, how you, as you started out, you were going to write one thing, but as you continue to listen, you followed that, and you weren't afraid of that. And so thank you for that, because to me, that's just that present example of listening. And another example that continues to inspire me is Martin Luther King Jr. In the movie Selma, I know this sounds intense, but I went to see it 5 times. And
I
I
saw it
love,
3 times, so I'm with
did
you.
you? I'm so with you, buddy. Okay, so I love the scene on the bridge. They're in the middle of the bridge, and they've done all the planning, etc. And all of a sudden, you see him kneel down in the middle of the bridge. And again, all these people are behind it, but he can also see what's ahead of him. And he stands up, and he has the courage to turn around and say, you know what, we got to go back. And then it wasn't, maybe a couple days later. Anyway, I just appreciate that example and your current example with this, and the example of what Euphrates does day to day. So bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Sami. Your book is awesome. I'm doing what you're saying. I'm not bragging, but I know Yeshua deeply. I would love to network with you. And I'm creating a community. People in Africa, people know Wazi Ofu is here, James Ofu is here. They're in the community I've created. Could we please network? I'm doing exactly what you're doing. And Yeshua said, all this and more that I've done shall you do. But it's even more than that. I agree fully with you. I love your vision of the community because that's what I've created. But also, as a person, we ourselves will be able to do more than he did as a person. I'm pushing that boundary. I'm meeting him. I do the sweat lodge ceremony. I would love to network.
Oh, wonderful.
I would love to network with you. I put my information in the chat. If it works, great. If not, great. Keep up the good work. We praise Jesus together.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. And join the Facebook or Instagram, and we could talk there if I don't get your information from here.
Yeah, Facebook's difficult. Oh, unless it's Messenger, but please take my information, email, whatever you want to do, call me, whatever you want to do. WhatsApp.
Perfect.
Let's do
Good.
it.
Thank you. Thank you. Love your energy. Thank you. Bless you.
Oh, and there's a comment from Emmanuel. Oh, and it talk about someone who also follows in the footsteps of Jesus. He's in Cameroon, and even his family had to leave because of danger, and he stayed because he said, I have to be here for my community. And he was sleeping in different churches. He was in incredible danger. So there's so many folks here, Sami, that
Wow.
I wish my last question could be, maybe you can, on your parting word, just how can we support you? How can we support this message? I love that you gave a couple ideas to join this community, and throughout the book you have so many parts of reflection, and I would just love to not also just read this in isolation. It's so profound, and I'm yearning to connect, and just whatever, if you can think of anything we could do to support you and live into this more and more, and then we'll give you the final word.
Yeah. Well, I am touched to tears by the comments. I'm reading some now, and the words that have been spoken. This for me is the best gift that I could receive at this time. And I say this living in Bethlehem, living where the great guy was born and what he taught us and what he taught the world. And so the invitation is for all of us just to begin to follow him. Just really follow his teachings. He's amazing. He is so full of love and light and compassion and fun. He was also a joker and as well. So let us come together as often as we can. I want to support you as much as I can because I really believe this is the new manifestation of Christ consciousness. And as I said before, the world is ready for something new. The world is hungry for something new. We are tired. We've been living wars for so long, destroying each other, killing each other, and we keep repeating. And many people like us are wanting and yearning for something new. So let us be the prophetic voice to these communities. And thank you, everyone, for the work you're doing. Just lots of love to all of you. Thank you.
Everyone, let's just close with a moment of silence as we came in and let this gathering of love, this message of profound love and compassion go out to all those who are not on this call and radiate out, and may this work be multiplied. So thank you all so much for joining. It means so much to me that you shared in this conversation and in this field. And what a day to do it on this 2-year anniversary of October 7th, so we don't repeat those same cycles. So love to you all. Deep, deep love and gratitude to you, Sami, for having the courage to write this book and to issue this call. And let's end in silence. Love all the hearts. That was so fun. Okay, moment of silence. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Janessa.
Thanks,
you,
all.
Thank you,
everyone.
Sammy.
Thanks,
Thank
Victor.
you. Yeah, yeah. Hello, Janessa.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Sami.
everyone.
Thanks,
Hi,
Ofu.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Carrie.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much. Thank
Kalista,
T.
you.
Thanks, Kara.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Gary,
Emily.
Very
Joy,
much.
Thanks,
Uthman,
Mark. My gosh, what time is it? Thanks, Barry.
Janessa.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks, Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you,
Ian. Thanks,
Sami.
Deborah.
Thank you.
Glenn.
Thank you,
Thank
James.
you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you
You can
all.
make
Thank
it,
you.
Teak. We put it on a Tuesday for you.
Yeah.
Love it. Bye, everybody.
Bye, you all. Thank you.
Yeah.